Welcome, dear listener, to Wishcrafting, where we explore magic, myth, and folklore, and tell some spooky stories along the way. The spooky story I have for you today is all about corpse roads, the pathways created solely for the purpose of transporting the dead, and for making sure that they don't follow you back. So, put on some funeral black and settle in as we travel along the corpse road. A grassy footpath runs along a lonely hillside in Cumbria, England. An old corpse road once used to carry the dead to consecrated grounds. On a dim autumn evening, one can imagine a solemn procession winding down the narrow lane, the muffled footfalls of pallbearers carrying a coffin towards the churchyard. These pathways, known in Britain as corpse roads or coffin roads, once formed the final journey of the departed, and they are steeped in folklore and superstition. In the British Isles, especially in rural England, Wales, and Ireland, such routes connected outlying villages to the parish, or mother church, where burials took place. These pathways were often just wide enough for pallbearers walking two abreast with a coffin, and they were deliberately kept straight whenever possible, because folklore held that ghosts and spirits traveled in straight lines. By keeping the roads direct, the living could speed up the soul's passage, yet also, paradoxically, confine its wanderings to the proper path. There was a practical reason in straight roads, of course. They made the journey quicker for the burdened mourners, but superstition eagerly supplied a deeper meaning. Many believed that the spirit of the deceased would follow the route its body took after death. To prevent it from straying back home or getting into mischief, the route had to be carefully managed. In some regions, folks said that ghosts could only move in a straight line and could not cross running water. Thus, corpse roads often crossed a stream or a river at least once, and by carrying the coffin over a bridge or a fjord, the procession created a supernatural barrier behind them and between them and the departed. As one legend put it, a spirit cannot return to haunt the living once it's been taken across flowing water. Similarly, crossroads along the way serve to confuse wandering spirits. At crossroads, that mystic intersection of paths, the coffin might be set down and rotated, or the pallbearers would exchange places. This custom of turning the coffin was meant to disorient the dead so that the spirit wouldn't follow the mourners back home. They were really worried about that back then. In British traditions, pallbearers would sometimes carry the coffin feet first, and even sometimes carry it in a circle in the churchyard before entering. Again, all to prevent the spirit from finding its way back. At some old crossroads in the UK, you'll still find stone slabs or crosses called coffin stones, designated resting points where the living pause to pray and the dead could be set down safely for a moment. However, even after the coffin was carried over the bridge, passed through the crossroads, and laid to rest, those lonely lanes did not fall silent. Many old villages have tales of ghostly apparitions still traveling the corpse roads. Eerie lights known as corpse candles were said to flicker along these paths at night, pale blue flames gliding low to the ground. According to Welsh and Irish lore, such lights would appear before a death, tracing the route from the dying person's house all the way to the graveyard. There were also tales of spirit processions or phantom funerals. Those unlucky enough to see a phantom funeral might be witnessing an omen of their own or someone close to them's impending demise. Folklorist accounts from small towns in the British Isles describe silent funerals of spectral figures being observed, or sometimes one single mysterious light moving along the route where a real funeral would soon travel. Travelers on corpse roads were also wary of will-o'-the-wisps, or trickster lights believed to be fairies, or, after Christianization, believed to be souls of unbaptized children or sinners. These flickering orbs would lead night wanderers off the safe path and to their demise. For protection, crosses were often erected at crossroads, giving the crossing its very name, to guard against these evil forces. British and Irish funeral customs also included many precautions and superstitions surrounding the corpse roads. It was common to stop at a lich gate or corpse gate at the churchyard entrance, where the priest would meet the procession. At the lich gate and other staging points along the way, prayers were said to ensure, you guessed it, that the ghost of the recently departed would not follow anyone back home. In some areas, mourners would share a dram of whiskey or ale when the coffin was finally at rest, a toast to the departed. But merriment was curtailed by fears of offending the dead. Alongside not partying too hard to offend the dead, one was never to carry a corpse over any route twice. The first path had to be the last. Folks in Wales insisted that fields the coffin roads crossed would never again bear healthy crops, the ground tainted by death's passage. Thus, those plots were often left fallow or used only for grazing, further isolating the path. No building or fence could be obstructing the corpse road either, and some families even left a front door perpetually unlocked solely so that a coffin's exit would be unhindered by locks or thresholds, and they could get to the corpse road that much more clearly when the time came. If a thunderstorm happened to break out during a funeral, it was said to foretell another death by hindering the corpse road's procession, and people would whisper that the spirit of the storm might snatch the soul before it could reach the hallowed ground and be laid to rest. While corpse roads are most famously associated with the UK and Ireland, the idea of spectral roads of the dead span across many cultures. In Norse tradition, for example, there is Helvegen, or the road to hell, as in Hel, the realm of the dead, and also the same name of the goddess who rules over it. The Norse peoples envisioned the journey to the afterlife as a very difficult road, descending northward into mist and darkness, and crossing the spectral river of Gogi by a golden bridge, and passing through the gates of Hell's domain. The very word Helvegir appears in sagas to denote the soul's path. One Old Norse account describes a hero traveling with a mysterious woman under the earth, through misty valleys, and across a bridge strewn with weapons into the land of the dead. This mythic path, guarded by a monstrous hound and a giantess warden, resonates with the corpse road lore. It's linear, perilous, and liminal, and marks the boundary between living and dead. In the same or similar region, we might also consider the wild hunt of Germanic folklore, which we'll talk about later on this year, which is a ghostly cavalcade racing across the sky on wintry nights, and is another echo of souls in transit along unseen roads. In Scandinavia's folkloric song, Helvegen, the lyrics ask, who will sing for the dying as they walk the road to the beyond, capturing the ancient fear and hope tied to that final journey. In Asia, funeral processions likewise developed unique customs to manage the spirits' travel. Folks were very concerned about spirits being able to get where they're going, and then also their ability to come back the way they came, all over. And Chinese traditions held that if a funeral convoy must cross a stream or a bridge, the family must call out to the soul of the deceased, informing it of the crossing so that the spirit does not become lost or left behind, because, to them, an uninformed soul cannot cross water. Even today, in some Chinese communities, as the hearse and mourners go over a river, they'll shout the dead person's name, or say, "We're crossing the water now," to ensure that the ghost remains with them. And this is Editing Wish, so it's going to sound very different from the other audio, but I wanted to jump in here and say, as I was editing this, another connection came to me with corpses not being able to cross over water or needing their family to tell them so they could cross over the water. In modern spiritual practices and traditions of all kinds, we now recognize water as this element that holds the universal all, the consciousness of all, the flow of all time. Oftentimes in pagan traditions, you'll hear water that remembers. So it implies that water has this deep knowing, and to engage with water is to also engage with a knowing, with a consciousness. So it's really interesting to see these traditions globally mirrored that have some kind of knowledge across the board that the spirit in its state as spirit, as soul, is lacking the same kind of consciousness or at least ability to engage with water like we do as living human beings as we are right now. In the UK with the Tuatha De Danann, you have to cross over or underneath water to get to the spirit realm, and the water is the barrier between us and the spirit realm, us and the dead. And I just think it's really interesting how water, this cosmic holding of information, of life, of time, is universally recognized as the barrier between us and the other world, whether that be the other world of the dead, the other world of the fae, the other world of different planes, the ancestors. I think it's just something really interesting to think about, and I wanted to throw it in there so you can think about it too. There you go. Boom. Let's get back to the regular audio. Chinese households also scatter paper or spirit money along the route to feed and distract any hungry ghosts that might waylay the soul on its journey. In the home after death, all mirrors are covered and the coffin is placed facing the door, preparing for its exit, and preventing the spirit from confusion if it were to see its own corpse's reflection in the mirror before they depart. Similarly, in parts of Indonesia and Malaysia, people traditionally made loud noises or set off firecrackers when a coffin left the house, both to honor the dead and to scare away lurking spirits from clinging on to the funeral party as they make their procession. Here in the United States, we are no strangers to thwarting ghosts. The idea of pausing at the crossroads to thwart evil spirits or ghosts, which was so prevalent all over, really took root in the American South and especially Appalachia. The Scots-Irish settlers of Appalachia brought many of the old country death omens and customs. For instance, it was said to be bad luck if a funeral procession passes you on the way. If you are to pass a funeral procession, you should stop and let it go by until you can't see it anymore, both out of respect and self-preservation, because again, you don't want that spirit to follow you home. To this day, in rural Appalachian areas and in the South, drivers still reflexively pull over for passing funerals, a gesture born from both courtesy and the vestiges of superstition. If you live in the South, you might have experienced this yourself, or maybe you're like me and you thought that was the law. It is not, in fact, the law. It is just deeply ingrained belief and superstition and respect. There's also a belief here in Appalachia that death travels in threes, so it's not uncommon for you to see four-way crossroads instead of three-way crossroads. The three-ways are still there, but they're less common because they are intentionally made with four ways to try and break the perilous pattern of triads, or thwart ghosts from getting stuck at a three-way crossroads and, can you guess? Following you home. Ding, 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 ding. In Appalachian cemeteries, graves were often oriented east to west, with the feet towards the east, so that the dead would face the rising sun on Judgment Day, a practice that echoed the Old World Christian burials along God's highways to the great thereafter. And much like their British ancestors, Appalachian communities once held that suicides or evildoers should be buried at a remote crossroads in order to not be disturbed, lest they become hungry ghosts, poltergeists, or otherwise just plain bad spirits. The logic was that if they were troubled in life, they might have troubled spirits as well and try to rise. So you would place them at a remote four-way crossroads so that they wouldn't be disturbed, and if they did decide to rise, the four-way crossroads would give them plenty of options and time to be confused before they made their way wherever they were going to go. Fingers crossed, it's not into your town. It's not just Appalachia, though. American folklore brims with ghost stories of roadside haints and phantom funerals. It's said that on certain nights, a person with the second sight might be able to witness a spectral funeral procession winding down through the holler, perhaps hearing the creak of wagon wheels or the soft hymn of an unseen choir, only for the vision to vanish as soon as they reach the crossroads. These tales mirror the British and Irish corpse candle legends and gave mountain folk from the very tip of the Smokies all the way down to Texas a healthy fear of wandering alone on roads after dark. There are folkloric accounts of people claiming to hear a death wagon or phantom hearse as a warning that someone nearby would soon die. One famous story comes out of Illinois, from a town called Prairie du Rocher, which is a French-settled region with its own blend of old-world European folklore, all mixed up in the cauldron from the immigrants who settled there. This story in particular tells of a phantom funeral procession seen on a summer night near an old church in town, and is complete with ghostly horses and a line of spectral mourners. The local legend says that only a few can see it, and that it reenacts a long-ago tragedy looping eternally on the road. But that's not all. This isn't just a local legend. Multiple people over decades have said to have seen this phantom funeral procession, with the most recent account being in 2016. Crossroads in the American South also gained notoriety as supernatural hotspots in their own right. Beyond just corpse roads and funeral lore, they became known as places to encounter dark forces, or to make uncanny bargains. In Southern African American hoodoo tradition and popular blues folklore, the crossroads at midnight is where one might meet the devil and strike a fabled deal, oftentimes to obtain musical talent, as in the legend of Robert Johnson, which has had many films made about this particular folkloric story. This idea of the crossroads as a devil's rendezvous point ties back to the older belief of crossroads as a meeting point of worlds and spirits, risky places where a soul could get snared or stuck to you. It's an interesting convergence. In death lore, crossroads confuse spirits and keep them at bay, keeping them busy, but in other lore, the crossroads invite spirits to appear. Both interpretations agree that a crossing of ways is profoundly liminal, neither here nor there, a threshold where normal rules falter. From the windswept coffin roots of rural England to the misty Helvegen of Norse myth, from Chinese funeral roads to Appalachian graveyard paths, human cultures have long charted special courses for the dead. These corpse roads, crossroads, and coffin pathways reflect our deepest yearnings and fears, to guide beloved souls safely to rest, and to keep the restless dead from troubling the living. Even now, walking an old coffin trail can send a shiver up your spine. Perhaps it's just the loneliness of the place, or the weight of history underfoot. But as dusk deepens, and stray fog clings to the hedgerows, you might feel that you're not entirely alone. Generations of footsteps, some living, some not, have worn that very path. In the whispers of the wind, you may hear an echo of prayer, songs, and whispered assurances offered to the departed on their final journey. Such roads and pathways are part of the in-between places of the world. And on a dark Samhain night when the veil thins, who's to say that a traveler might not glimpse a faint procession ahead, lanterns bobbing, leading the way once more towards hallowed ground. That's all I have for you today, my dear spooky listener. I hope you enjoyed this one. Until next time, my name is Wishamaya, and don't forget to keep your roots deep and your dreams wild.